Hey, and welcome back for section 2 of chapter 19, waste. But today we're going to specifically be talking about reducing solid waste. So the topic is, how do we cut it down? How do we minimize it? Your essential question, something to think about as we go through our notes today. What are several different ways you can reduce solid waste? What can we do? What is my part? What is your part to just cut it down? So maybe it's not 4.5 pounds a day. We can cut it down to 2, something. Let's take a look at some options. Something to think about as we move through today's lesson. Your vocab word kind of starting off as source reduction. Literally reducing it at the source, wherever it's getting generated. So this could be a change in the design of a product. So less is more. The manufacture of it, purchase, you and I going to get it, or use of materials or products to reduce their amount of toxicity. Let's use something that's not toxic as opposed to something that is toxic. Let's use something that's good for the environment instead of something bad for the environment. Even if we're in our yard, can we use some organic fertilizer instead of only chemical? Something to cut down on it. This can also include just reusing products. Once again, back to my bear versus my glass jar. I'm not more likely to throw the bear away after one use than I am the glass jar. Tend to reuse the jar, take it back, refill it. Anyway, that's the idea. This is kind of a lot of times seen as a single-use item. We use it and we toss it. Something we can use over and over. One of the ways we can help cut back. If you and I produce less waste, we'll reduce the expense and difficulty of collecting it. Once again, less is better when it comes down to it. We got to find ways to cut down. So, where you and I really come in. You and I can influence the manufacturers, the people that make it, because they make it to turn a profit. They're trying to make money. So, if we don't buy it, they won't make it, or not as much of it. So we have a way to influence that by buying products that have less packaging. Let's opt for this one with less instead of that one with more. We got to make our voices heard, and usually that's with our pocketbooks. You could purchase, for instance, dish towels instead of paper towels. You got to use something simple. It's just liquid or coffee, etc. Use this. We wipe it up, we wash it. I've had this thing for years. We go through these really quickly. Try and use dish towels when at all possible for wiping up simple spills, etc. Now you have something really bad, it's going to ruin your towel, sure. I'm not saying never use paper towels, but minimize it. Don't let it be your go-to thing for a spill. Use this. We use it over and over and over, and a simple toss in the laundry, and it's good to go. We could also reduce waste, conserve resources by redesigning products to use less materials, possibly that will last longer. And the next one comes up, kind of this battle again, glass versus plastic. Now, this tends to last longer. We tend to use it, reuse it, store it. Like for me in my garage, I might keep nails or something else, maybe a paint thinner for when I do some projects. Lots of things versus a plastic. Now, some downsides. I drop it, it breaks. I drop this, it doesn't. So that's why it's a battle. It's not like, hey, just get rid of everything of here, but choices have to be made. What's the best way to go? Another one is this guy. I can buy one of these, go do my shopping, and I can use it for years, actually. But I can get 2 or 3 years. 1 year of using this going to the grocery store would save 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't have time to count. Over 250 of these things are used a year as opposed to one of these. You keep one of these things for 4 years, it's 1,000 of these not in the dump. But even with these, I try to find ways to reuse them. I don't just throw them away. I try and keep them around the house, something. But one way we can. Another way is going to be recycling. Can we recover useful materials from scrap from something else? We all tend to know what recycling is, because we have our blue and orange bins here in Gainesville County, Florida. You, wherever you live, probably have your own recycling type plan and make use of it the best you can. Typically, it saves a lot of money. 95% less energy is needed to produce aluminum from this than it is to get it from ore. It takes a lot of energy to get this stuff out of the ground, refine it, break the rock, etc. Once I have the aluminum and we turn it into this, we don't want to throw this in the garbage can. We want to recycle it, because it takes 95% less energy when we crunch this thing down to turn it into aluminum foil or something else. A lot less energy involved if we recycle. No, not everything is recyclable, but we need to do what we can. When it comes to making paper, well, it's 70% less energy needed if we take this, which is in the recycle bin, to grind this back up and turn it into a piece of paper than it does this. When we chop down the tree initially, grind this up, turn it into pulp into the process to make a nice sheet of paper, 70% less energy because it's already paper. We just kind of have to reliquefy it, dry it back out, than to take it from the wood. A lot less energy. Less energy is good. So, but in recycling, there are a series of steps involved, obviously. We got to collect and sort it. So I got to take, my plastic, what is this going to go in? Plastic as opposed to glass, as opposed to metal, and even the types of metal. Now, properties help a lot here, because aluminum is not magnetic. So you can pass the metal over a magnet. Anything with iron collects to the magnet and other things don't. There are a lot of ways we can help minimize to do the sorting, but the first thing is we have to sort it. Now, for us here in Gainesville, Florida, we have our blue and our orange bins. The orange bins should be your paper products. And then the blue bin is your glass, plastics, and metals, typically. But then waste comes by and they carry it to a recycling factory. Different trucks come. Our solid waste goes on one, our yard waste goes on another truck, and the recycling is a third. So 3 trucks come by your house once a week to take care of this stuff. So it goes to a different place. They clean these materials. Your stuff has to get washed out. Do them a favor. Rinse out your milk jugs. Rinse out your soda cans. It takes a lot less energy on the other end. Once that stuff is all hardened and dried, it's kind of harder to deal with. It takes a lot more energy. So rinse it off here, because they have to get them clean there before they can. Then they shred this material, crush it, get it into different forms. Depending if it's a can, they tend to crush it down, and then they use that to make the raw materials again, whether they're heating it up, melting it in paper, sort of reliquefying it, adding it back to water, and then we have to sell it to the consumers. So the recyclable place, they turn it into a sellable product. They take the aluminum and put it more back down into a little pellet form that they can sell to whoever, and then they can turn it back into a can, whatever it is they're after. But we have to sell it, and then you and I have to buy it. Are you going to buy something that's recycled over something that's not recycled? Buying recycled paper, better for the environment, better for the economy, everything, than paper straight from the old tree. It comes down to choices on your part and my part every day. It's all these little things. Now, when it comes to recycling, the next slide is kind of showing what you can recycle. You need to empty them and rinse them out before dumping them in the bin. But bottles, jugs, containers, once again, any kind of bottles, etc., the glass, metals, cans, etc., cardboard, once again, cardboard cartons, flatten them, break them down, and any kind of paper. Just paper, don't crumple it, leave it nice and flat, drop it in the bin. These are all recyclable. Now, some things you don't want to. Plastic bags. Plastic bags of any kind, they can't be recycled, even if it's a Ziploc. If it's a bag, can't go in the recycle bin. Styrofoam. This stuff can't be recycled. They can't reuse it. This is really just plastic that has air infused into it. But styrofoams can't be. This could be, you go to a takeout place and they have those little clamshell styrofoam, you got to throw them out. No good. And kind of along with that, a container that's had food in it. If it's got food bits left in it, we can't recycle it. The grease and other stuff can contaminate a whole thing. So you got an old pizza box, can't go in the recycle bin. Hey, you got a frozen pizza and the pizza came in a little plastic bag, sure, that box can be thrown away. But you get one from a local place and there's grease all on the cardboard, no good, you got to throw it away. The other thing is what they call tanglers. Now this is wire, but you think, oh, that'd be great because the plastic on it's okay. It's got copper wire, we want to use it. But if I toss this in the recycle bin, it gets caught up in the machinery and it can tangle it all up. So rope, garden hoses, anything of this nature, we can't really recycle because it winds up causing more problems than it's worth. So we have these steps. But if you and I purchase the products made from them, there's going to be an increase in the demand. They'll make more of it if that's what we want to buy. Manufacturers will put more facilities in and say, hey, we need more of this recycled product stuff. That's what the people like. You and I have to make a decision to do it. Next slide is even showing something like a bench. All kinds of things get made from recycled paper or bags, in this case, or plastics. Park bench made out of it. You might buy paper. You can get toilet paper, paper towels, things of this nature. Lots and lots of stuff comes from use. My car, if you watch that demo a while back, has recycled materials all up in the dash, along in the doors, some way to take advantage of this stuff. Next, we're going to talk about composting. Now this is going to be organic matter. But once again, all that food that winds up going in the trash can doesn't really need to go in the trash can. There's a better place for it. Number one, eat it if at all possible. But I get it. Food goes bad eventually. You can't always make use of every scrap of it anyway. This is where composting comes in. This is going to be yard waste, leaves that you rake up, grass clippings, sticks that fall down, food, little bits of stuff that you chop up and you're not going to use. This stuff is great fertilizer. You toss it in a compost bin, it begins to rot, the bacteria, the worms break it down, and then you can reuse that to put into your garden as fertilizer. This keeps some of the organic waste out of the landfills. It's putting nutrients back in the soil. Once again, if you're cutting all that grass clippings, it's better to get it back into your soil. It increases the soil organisms. Once again, all that material draws in the worms, the bacteria, the things that really need this. Even cuts down on some diseases from plants. It's helpful for them. And once again, it's just cutting down the need for fertilizers and even a lot of pesticides by getting this back in. So it says yard waste itself. This is stuff that we just haul out to the street for the company to come by, pick it up and haul it off for us, is about 14% of our solid waste. Almost all of that we could put back into the soil, into the ground. It's a very effective way of handling biodegradable waste, even from businesses at home. If just all of our biodegradables, this is stuff that would break down, including some newspaper. Now, you got a newspaper every day, you probably wouldn't be able to do it. But the occasional bits of paper or cardboard, they break down as well. Could seriously reduce it. Now, when it comes to composting, there's kind of a picture up here of a large scale. Depending on where you live, what kind of house or setting, you might be able to set up a compost bin kind of like the one on the PowerPoint here. You kind of have the stuff on one side and it breaks down and you use the other side to pull out the stuff to put back in your yard. But I want to show you a type of composting bin that everybody can do. Sometimes they're called worm bins. You take something like a 5-gallon bucket, a kitty litter bucket, something that just has a lid on it. You put these things in your garden, you put all of your household biodegradables, food waste in it, and it's a composting bin anybody can do. It's good for your yard and the environment. Even if you're in an apartment, you might have flower beds somewhere, something right outside, you could take advantage of this. Why don't we head on outside and I'll show you what this little worm bin, composting bin looks like. So let's take off and we'll be right back. All right, here we are out in my rose garden and blueberry bushes. This thing right here is my compost bin, and we're gonna stick some compost in it. Why don't you guys come on in closer and take a look at what she looks like inside. Now this isn't a big compost bin. This is really kind of some banana peel, my pineapple from the other day. This is kind of a worm bin, if you will. There's little holes in the side so the worms and little critters can get in there, eat it, digest it, then move out into my rose garden and leave their worm pilings, known as worm poop. This is a small compost bin anybody can do. 5-gallon jar, kitty litter bucket, poke some holes in the side, put it mainly in the ground just so you can toss stuff in it. You can make one of these at home just like I did for my garden. All right, let's head back inside. All right, so that's a simple compost bin. Once again, anybody can do it, so take advantage of it. Another thing that we need to do is simply change the materials that we use. This could eliminate a lot of solid waste. Recycling things into new, again, like we've talked about, can help. Anything we recycle, we're using it again, so it's not winding up in the landfill. Plastic beverage containers. Now, I don't have a plastic beverage container, but I got my little bear here. They can be turned into something, well, maybe it's not food. We used it as a beverage thing, but it can be turned into something else, like insulation or carpet yarn, some sort of textiles, like polyester type weave, fiber fill. So even though it was food quality to begin with, we're not going to reuse it as food quality, but there's lots of other things it can be used for. Now we come to an interesting topic. This is photodegradable plastics. So unlike non-biodegradable plastic like this or my bags, these don't break down. We throw them out and 44 years later it still looks like a honey bear. 44 years later it still looks like this plastic bag. Might have a hole in it, but that's it. Or my fork. I throw my fork out and 50 years later there's still a fork in the ground. Now an interesting side note, America uses the disposable fork. China went with a different option. They use a completely biodegradable utensil, the chopstick, wood. So if it goes down into the ground, it does rot and go back. So something to think about, different ways to go about it. But anyway, photodegradable plastics. They become weak and brittle. So this is something, this is not, but if it was a photodegradable, if it does go in the landfill or in your compost bin or even out on the side of the road, heaven forbid, when it's in the sun, it begins to break down. It'll break down into little pieces. Or we sometimes talk about green plastic. Green plastic is made with, there's some natural sugars built into it as well. And then it can break down. The sugar parts of it will break down in time and it'll break up into smaller little pieces. So it takes less fossil fuels. Once again, remember, this comes from fossil fuel. This is oil. It's a byproduct of refining oil. And it requires a lot less of the fossil fuels to make these degradable plastics. Once again, it's not 100% plastic. and it's been engineered to degrade ultimately in about 45 days of being thrown away. So it gets tossed in. The little bits that are made of sugar mixed in with it, now they're treated so they don't break down when you're using it, but after time. The bacteria in the soil will get in and they'll eat the sugars. And they leave it very weak. So it's going to be full of lots of little microscopic holes all over it. And then that chemical agent that was in it causes those long slime-like polymer chains to break down into shorter molecules. The picture on the slide kind of shows this, and I'll try and throw it up behind me here. You start with your plastic bottle. After 20, 30 days, it begins to break down. It's kind of shrinking up some. The parts fall apart, and then that last slide, you're seeing how it's all more broken down. So it minimizes it. Of course, everything comes with problems. Of course, they're a little more expensive to make. They don't last as long on the shelf. But the main problem is the plastic is still there. All we're doing is taking it from holding its shape like this, where it'll break down into a much smaller, finer bits of plastic that are scattered about, but the plastic is still there. It's just not in the shape of the honey bear anymore. It's almost like if I shredded it and threw it out. It can kind of blend in with the ground, but once again, it's not really gone. So it's not really an ultimate solution, but some of it is better. And that's what a lot of this is, trade-offs. What's the best thing we can do? They do help reduce the harmful effects of litter has on the animals, because if this is out, well, a turtle can get in it, pokes his head through, but it's trapped in here and it can grow. We've all seen the pictures of turtles, like up here, problem. Well, the degradable plastics would eliminate that. The plastic is still there, but it's not in the shapes that something gets tangled and it causes it to die. So once again, the bits of plastic still remain, but it's in smaller little bits and pieces. It does help reduce some of these harmful effects, but once again, it's still there. All right, well, that's it for reducing. Hopefully you can find a way at your house to recycle, reuse, eliminate some of your yard waste in a compost bin, or at least those little bits of the tomato and the pepper and the banana peels. Instead of going in the trash, let's put them in our yards and let the worms eat it, the bacteria, and make it better for the environment. You find a way to do something yourself, make the world a little better place, and I'll see you next time when we talk about hazardous waste.